Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to discuss Gift from the Sea by Morrow Lindbergh. This is a book that was recommended to me by my very first business mentor, and he's been really a great source of books to me over the years, and hopefully I've done the favor by sending some films and books his way as well. And Anne discusses some reflections on life in general, and you could say she's a woman talking to women as well, but her reflections, I think, are also worthwhile for men to take in. I've decided to pull an excerpt from the book that I would say is specifically aimed at women, but I think that both men and women can profit. And just because I'm a man doesn't mean I can't reflect on the things that impact women. I have a mother, I have sisters, I have female friends, so whenever I can learn about things that are particular to the life of women, I feel like I can get more insight into my relationships with them. And so I seek out such information. So in each of these chapters, she's finding a particular shell on the shore and she's reflecting on that shell. And she has a picture of the type of shell. So this very first one that I'm going to read, well, sorry, not the first one. The only one I'm going to read is chapter 3 here, Moon Shell. And I'm just going to read an excerpt of it. Solitude, says the moon shell. Every person, especially every woman, should be alone sometime during the year, some part of each week, and each day. How revolutionary that sounds, and how impossible of attainment. To many women, such a program seems quite out of reach. They have no extra income to spend on a vacation for themselves, no time left over from the weekly drudgery of housework for a day off, no energy after the daily cooking, cleaning, and washing, for even an hour of creative solitude. Is this then only an economic problem? I do not think so. Every paid worker, no matter where in the economic scale, expects a day off a week and a vacation a year. By and large, mothers and housewives are the only workers who do not have regular time off. They are the great vacationless class. They rarely even complain of their lack, apparently not considering occasional time to themselves as a justifiable need. Herein lies one key to the problem. If women were convinced that a day off or an hour of solitude was a reasonable ambition, they would find a way of attaining it. As it is, they feel so unjustified in their demand that they rarely make the attempt. One has only to look at those women who actually have the economic means, or the time and energy for solitude, yet do not use it, to realize that the problem is not solely economic. It is more a question of inner convictions than of outer pressures, though. Of course, the outer pressures are there and make it more difficult. As far as the search for solitude is concerned, we live in a negative atmosphere as invisible, as all-pervasive, and as enervating as high humidity on an August afternoon. The world today does not understand, in either man or woman, the need to be alone. How inexplicable it seems. Anything else will be accepted as a better excuse. If one sets aside time for a business appointment, a trip to the hairdresser, a social engagement, or a shopping expedition, that time is accepted as inviolable. But if one says, I cannot come because that is my hour to be alone, one is considered rude, egotistical, or strange. What a commentary on our civilization when being alone is considered suspect. When one has to apologize for it, make excuses, hide the fact that one practices it, like a secret vice. Actually, these are among the most important times in one's life, when one is alone. Certain springs are tapped only when we are alone. The artist knows he must be alone to create, the writer to work out his thoughts, the musician to compose, the saint to pray. But women need solitude in order to find again the true essence of themselves, that firm strand which will be the indispensable center of a whole web of human relationships. She must find that inner stillness which Charles Morgan describes as the stilling of the soul within the activities of the mind and body, so that it might be still as the axis of a revolving wheel is still. This beautiful image is to my mind the one that women could hold before their eyes. This is an end toward which we could strive, to be the still axis within the revolving wheel of relationships, obligations, and activities. Solitude alone is not the answer to this, it is only a step toward it, a mechanical aid, like the room of one's own demanded for women, before they could make their place in the world. The problem is not entirely in finding the room of one's own, the time alone, difficult and necessary as this is. The problem is more how to still the soul in the midst of its activities. In fact, the problem is how to feed the soul. For it is the spirit of woman that is going dry, not the mechanics that are wanting. Mechanically, woman has gained in the past generation. Certainly in America, our lives are easier, freer, more open to opportunities, thanks, among other things, to the feminist battles. The room of one's own, the hour alone, are now more possible in a wider economic class than ever before. But these hard-won prizes are insufficient because we have not yet learned how to use them. The feminists did not look that far ahead. They laid down no rules of conduct. For them, it was enough to demand the privileges. The exploration of their use, as in all pioneer movements, was left open to the women who would follow. And woman today is still searching. We are aware of our hunger and needs, but still ignorant of what will satisfy them. With our garnered free time, we are more apt to drain our creative springs than to refill them. With our pitchers, we attempt sometimes to water a field, not a garden. We throw ourselves indiscriminately into committees and causes. Not knowing how to feed the spirit, we try to muffle its demands and distractions. Instead of stilling the center, the axis of the wheel, we add more centrifugal activities to our lives, which tend to throw us off balance. If you're enjoying this content, consider hitting like, subscribe. You'll push this out to other people who might be interested. And it's a free way for you to support the channel. Mechanically, we have gained in the last generation, but spiritually we have, I think, unwittingly lost. In other times, women had in their lives more forces which centered them, whether or not they realized it. Sources which nourished them, whether or not they consciously went to these springs. Their very seclusion in the home gave them time alone. Many of their duties were conducive to a quiet contemplative drawing together of the self. They had more creative tasks to perform. Nothing feeds the center so much as creative work, even humble kinds like cooking and sewing. Baking bread, weaving cloth, putting up preserves, teaching and singing to children must have been far more nourishing than being the family chauffeur, or shopping at supermarkets, or doing housework with mechanical aids. The art and craft of housework has diminished. Much of the time-consuming drudgery, despite modern advertising to the contrary, remains. In housework, as in the rest of life, the curtain of mechanization has come down between the mind and the hand. The church, too, has always been a great centering force for women. Through what ages women have had that quiet hour, free of interruption, to draw themselves together. No wonder woman had been the mainstay of the church. Here were the advantages of the room of her own, the time alone, the quiet, the peace, all rolled into one and sanctioned by the approval of both family and community. Here no one could intrude with a careless call, mother, wife. Here, finally and more deeply, woman was whole, not split into 1,000 functions. She was able to give herself completely in that hour in worship, in prayer, in communion, and be completely accepted. And in that giving and acceptance she was renewed. The springs were refilled. The church is still a great centering force for men and women, more needed than ever before, as its increasing membership shows. But are those who attend as ready to give themselves or to receive its message as they used to be? Our daily life does not prepare us for contemplation. How can a single weekly hour of church, helpful as it may be, counteract the many daily hours of distraction that surround it? If we had our contemplative hour at home, we might be readier to give ourselves at church and find ourselves more completely renewed. For the need for renewal is still there. The desire to be accepted whole, the desire to be seen as an individual, not as a collection of functions, the desire to give oneself completely and purposefully pursues us always, and has its part in pushing us into more and more distractions, illusory love affairs, or the haven of hospitals and doctors' offices. The answer is not in going back, in putting woman in the home, and giving her the broom and the needle again. A number of mechanical aids save us time and energy. But neither is the answer in dissipating our time and energy in more purposeless occupations, more accumulations which supposedly simplify life but actually burden it, more possessions which we do not have time to use or appreciate, more diversions to fill up the void. In other words, The answer is not in the feverish pursuit of centrifugal activities which only lead, in the end, to fragmentation. Woman's life today is tending more and more toward the state William James describes so well in The German World, Zerrissenheit, torn to pieces hood. She cannot live perpetually in Zerrissenheit. She will be shattered into 1,000 pieces. On the contrary, she must consciously encourage those pursuits which oppose the centrifugal forces of today. Quiet time alone, contemplation, prayer, music, a centering line of thought or reading, of study or work. It can be physical or intellectual or artistic, any creative life proceeding from oneself. It need not be an enormous project or a great work, but it should be something of one's own. Arranging a bowl of flowers in the morning can give a sense of quiet in a crowded day, like writing a poem or saying a prayer. What matters is that one, for a time, be inwardly attentive. Solitude, says the moonshell. Center down, say the Quaker saints. To the possession of the self the way is inward, says Plotinus. The cell of self-knowledge is the stall in which the pilgrim must be reborn, says St. Catherine of Siena. Voices from the past. In fact, these are pursuits and virtues of the past, but done in another way today because done consciously, aware, with eyes open, not done as before, as part of the pattern of the time, not done before because everyone else is doing them. Almost no one is doing them. Revolutionary, in fact, because almost every trend and pressure, every voice from the outside is against this new way of inward living. Woman must be the pioneer in this turning inward for strength. In a sense, she has always been the pioneer. Less able, until the last generation, to escape into outward activities, the very limitations of her life forced her to look inward. And from looking inward she gained an inner strength, which man, in his outward active life, did not as often find. But in our recent efforts to emancipate ourselves, to prove ourselves the equal of man, we have, naturally enough perhaps, been drawn into competing with him in his outward activities, to the neglect of our own inner springs. Why have we been seduced into abandoning this timeless inner strength of woman for the temporal outer strength of man? This outer strength of man is essential to the pattern, but even here the reign of purely outer strength and purely outward solutions seems to be waning today. Men too are being forced to look inward, to find inner solutions as well as outer ones. Perhaps this change marks a new stage of maturity for modern extrovert, activist, materialistic Western man. Can it be that he is beginning to realize that the kingdom of heaven is within? Lots to ponder there. Gift from the Sea, and Morrow Lindbergh. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, there's a link in the description. That's one of the ways that you can support this channel. As I said before, a free way that you can support this channel is by hitting like, subscribe, sharing this content with people who you think would really appreciate that excerpt that I read today. If you'd like to thank me for this presentation, you can use Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. They're linked below, as well as links to Patreon and YouTube membership if you'd like to support my work on an ongoing basis. You'll get early access to videos like this one, you'll get to chat with me behind the scenes, and you'll also get videos that I don't release to the general public that are just for members and for patrons. If you'd like to nominate a book for the future, my Amazon wishlist is linked below. You'll see books like this one. You'll also see books on Palestine. If you're interested, I have a project called Palestine Bookshelf. You can check that out. But if you see other books like this and you'd like me to review them, just buy a copy, send it to me, and I'll do my best to review it in a timely manner. Until next time, enjoy your reading.